He was sentenced to 7 years in prison for failing to do something he wasn't really supposed to do in the first place. Getting exonerated after a conviction certainly comes with its share of emotion from all over the spectrum. But in Idaho, it also now comes with a six-figure settlement. It's a law that's been on the books for just a few years, but it's already been used to make up for mistakes in our justice system a couple of times. Joe Paris tells us the story of the latest and third time Idaho has had to pay out because of the Wrongful Conviction Act.
An Idaho man has been awarded over $319,000 from the state after being exonerated for a wrongful conviction that happened in 2017. Joseph LaCroix was convicted back in 2017 for failing to register as a sex offender. He was living in Bonneville County at the time. A judge sentenced him to a 7-year prison sentence. However, earlier this year, an Idaho court vacated his conviction. They found that Mr. LaCroix never needed to register as a sex offender in Idaho. LaCroix's original sex offense happened when he was a juvenile in the state of Oregon in 2002. Court records show that the case ended with a juvenile adjudication. The district court says that, quote, because LaCroix was a juvenile at the time of his Oregon offense and because LaCroix was charged and adjudicated as a juvenile, he was never convicted of a crime. So, because LaCroix was never convicted of a crime in Oregon, he didn't meet Idaho's requirement that would legally require him to register on Idaho's sex offender registry. Court records show that LaCroix was incarcerated for about a year, from 2017 to 2018, and he was released for a short time on probation, but was reincarcerated on June 20th, 2018. That June 20th date is interesting. 5 days later, the Idaho State Police sent LaCroix a letter telling him that they reviewed his file and determined that he did not meet criteria to register on the Idaho Sex Offender Registry. A crucial letter with a major conclusion. However, LaCroix didn't get the letter at the Pocatello, Idaho address it was sent to at the time. Court records indicate that the state of Idaho and the presiding judge in LaCroix's case had no knowledge that this letter had been sent. In 2020, LaCroix and his legal team moved to have his conviction thrown out. They argue that Idaho never had the jurisdiction to convict him of a felony, and his motion included the newly discovered letter from Idaho State Police. In March of 2023, an Idaho court dismissed the criminal case against LaCroix, the felony for not registering as a sex offender in Idaho, and they vacated his case. After his conviction was overturned, LaCroix filed a petition under Idaho's Wrongful Conviction Act, a 2021 law that provides for compensation when the justice system misses the mark. This is now the third time it's been used. LaCroix formerly sought a certificate of innocence and compensation from the state of Idaho. The state determined that LaCroix qualified for compensation under the act. It gives LaCroix up to $62,000 a year per wrongful imprisonment. Based on the time he spent incarcerated and on parole between his 2017 conviction and 2023 exoneration, LaCroix is now being awarded $319,297.74. as well as several $1,000s in addition to that for his legal fees throughout the years.
So next week, the Board of Examiners will take up the payout. And Brian, this is kind of expected to be a formal, I guess, board meeting there. And the Board of Examiners, if folks at home don't know, some of the top officials, including the Secretary of State, the AG, the governor, so they'll basically look at this, say, yep, cross the I's, dot the T's, and then they will likely make that payout. Very interesting.
I know what some people at home might be thinking. $319,000 does not seem like a lot of money for 7 years in prison, or sentence of 7 years in prison. I assume, though, this is why the legislature passed this law, to avoid these arbitrary numbers that get handed out by courts for wrongful convictions.
I mean, because if it's not in state court, you know, if it's not in state statute of what does the state do in this situation, then you can have legal teams that are suing for a lot more money, and then it would be up to a judge in a court of law to figure out, okay, well, how should they be compensated? So a few years ago in 2021, when they passed the Wrongful Conviction Act, I remember talking with Charles Fain and his legal team at the Capitol. They said, you know, this doesn't make up for what happened, but this payout, I mean, it was a big step, and there's a lot of pushing pre-2021 to get this passed. So now that we see it in action, this is how it works.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe.